Hi everybody, Fred the Pirate here, and this is a review of Game of Thrones Season 3, Episode 4, entitled, uh, it's entitled, And Now His Watch is Ended. So, a whole bunch of things happened, this episode. Come on, man. Alright, so again, a whole bunch of things happened this episode. A lot of really unexpected things, um, so pretty much like before I get into that, like the three really unexpected things that happened, was like the thing with the Night's Watch, and the thing with Danny. And the thing I found really interesting, which it wasn't necessarily unexpected, but like I found it interesting, was the thing with Theon. Although I kind of knew, like I suspected that would happen, but the two other things were really unexpected, and I'll get to that in more detail. Um, but definitely a really good episode, and a lot of really exciting stuff happened. To get right into the review, the game, this this week's episode, we pick up with Jamie, and I think it's in the daytime, and he and Brienne are being taken on horse, um, and they're being captured by the guys who took them captive, who I think are somehow involved with Rob, and I think they're from guys from the Riverland, so they're still they're captives, and we start out and we see Jamie with his hand tied um to his coat, and he's really exhausted, and he's really haggard, and he's starting to fall off his coat, and so the coat is falling off his horse, and so he ends up falling off in the mud, and the guys who have him captive are just giving him like a whole bunch of shit, and it's and honestly, they're giving him an inordinate amount of shit. I mean, because honestly, I know Jamie's a huge asshole, but it's but they're definitely having a lot of fun, kicking him when he's down, and it's just they're having a whole bunch of fun fucking with him, and it's they're just fucking with him, and they're just having so much fun doing this. And so we have that for a couple minutes, and then we cut away with a scene between Tyrion and Varys, and Tyrion's coming to Varys because he wants to use Varys's spies in order to figure out who tried to kill him. And so, and Tyrion points out to Varys, is I'm inheriting the position of Master of Coin, but I'm definitely from Littlefinger, but I'm definitely not inheriting his spies. And through this course of conversation, Varys tells Tyrion about how he became, a eunuch because, of how he was, castrated. And he tells Tyrion it's pretty much, and Varys has this big ass box in the room with him, and he's opening it up. And so he tells that story, and he tells to, Tyrion, if you wait long enough, you'll get influence. And he tells about all the shit he had to do to get where he was, because the thing is Varys started out as a slave, and now he's in charge of the small council, and so it's he tells them, if you wait long enough and you build up enough influence, you'll find out who's responsible for killing you, and you'll be able to take your revenge on them. And this ends up happening about the same time that he opens up his box, and it turns out that Varys, as he tells in his story, that he was castrated by a sorcerer, um, to deal with the fire god that we've obviously heard a lot about. So the sorcerer, cuts off Varys's junk so that he can sacrifice it to a fire god, and he talks to the god, and the god answers him back, and Varys tells him how this freaked him out, and this is, and then he gets into explaining why he helped Tyrion fight off Stannis and Melisandre, because like he doesn't like good magicians, like he kind of just like they weird him out. And so he explains, in this, like he explains to Tyrion, like, if you like that, he used fighting Melisandre as a way to, fix, like, at least in spirit, get revenge against the guy who castrated him. But then he makes a point of saying, like, if you gain enough influence um, over time, you can get real revenge. And when he says this is punctuated by him lifting up the big box, and we find out that there's the guy who the wizard who, the sorcerer guy who castrated him, and it looks like his mouth's sewed shut, or like there's thorny shit in there, like, or maybe it's sewed up with thorny shit, but it's like it just looks really weird. And so he shows them, and it's like, if you wait long enough, you'll figure out, who did what to you. So it's like, and you might get a bunch of spies yet. So, and then he ends up closing the lid back on the sorcerer guy who got him, which is like, and he's really skinny, and he's like really um got a lot of swords. So I have a feeling that Varys is probably just gonna shut the sorcerer guy back in the box, and that he's just gonna let him starve to death in the box. So that happened with them. Then we cut away to the Night Watch, and they're helping around Crasser's place, and they're just like shoveling like animal shit and stuff, and and they're talking about how they feel like that they're really on their own in things, and so we're with them for a little bit. And then at the same time, we cut away to Sam talking to Gilly, and with her and the baby, and she's like, can you help me uh, get my kid out of here? And Sam's like, he leaves because he really can't answer that, and he probably can't get the baby out. So, because again, last episode, Gilly had a boy, and obviously, Craster sacrifices his sons to the White Walkers to remain, I guess, relatively safe. So so we did that with them. Um, then after that, we cut away to Bran in his dream, and he's singing the Three-Eyed Crow, and Jojen's next to him. And so Jojen's explaining that, and this crow's like way up in the tree. And so Jojen's explaining, like, the crow needs you to get up in the air. And Bran's like, how? It's like, well, you climb, like, you gotta climb the tree. And so Bran does that, and he gets up into this tree branch, and then all of a sudden, Kat's there, and and she's like screaming at him, promising me, you promised me you wouldn't climb, and she's like shaking him and shaking him, and she's getting louder and louder and louder, until eventually, she pushes Bran out of the tree, and he ends up waking up. So I'm pretty sure that a lot of it, like, I know that a lot of the dream visions that Bran and I think people like Jojen are supposed to have, I think that they're supposed to be somewhat prophetic. So it's like, I don't really know what this means. Like, I guess I always this is a weird dream, because like most of Bran's dreams that he's had have been really straight to the point. Like it was really obvious what was happening, and I think a lot of them, like his dreams, like he was pretty much just seeing what was happening exactly as it happened. So it's like, honestly, I don't know what like Cat pushing him out of the tree means, because like I don't really think this is like a normal nightmare where like he's just having a nightmare of his mom pushing him out of a tree, because like obviously he has like a lot of anxiety and shit, like, and like Jojen's there, so it's like I don't really think this is like a normal dream, but like I don't know what this means either. So I'm really interested um in seeing exactly like what does this mean. Um so definitely looking forward to that. Um after that, we get a scene, I believe, with Varys talking to Ross. And so Ross is giving Varys information about Littlefinger because, like, again, last season, Ross came to Littlefinger to help her out to get away from Littlefinger because Littlefinger's kind of an asshole, and she doesn't really like Littlefinger. So she's agreed to help Varys, and so she gives him Varys information about how he's planning to take Sansa with him when he goes to the Vale to marry her aunt, which I believe her aunt's name is Eliza, or I think it's similar to Liza. I'm probably pronouncing her name wrong, and I apologize for that. But so they know this because they can look at his ship logs and like what he's planning on taking the ship with him, and he's planning to take two like feathered mattresses and apparently like Littlefinger's kind of an asshole too, like his ladies, which we kind of got that. So it was obvious that what he was doing. Um, so that scene happened really quickly. Um, and then we cut away to a scene with Joffrey, Marjorie, Cersei, and the Queen of Thorns, which is Marjorie's grandmother, who's the matriarch of the Tyrell family. Um, so when this is happening, like we cut into like Joffrey, I guess, trying to woo Marjorie, and he's like pretty much telling her all this like macabre shit about how like the Targaryens died and he's really enjoying it. And I really have to commend Marjorie for not being creeped out by this because he's just he's really enjoying it. And I mean, and it's and he's not enjoying this in a way like that people who enjoy history. And I mean, and I know that there's some people who have like really sometimes have, macabre interest and stuff, like who aren't really who don't do what Joffrey does, but he really has I think why his interest in this is so macabre is that he really enjoys talking about people dying and people suffering. And it's like you can tell that he really enjoys that and he really just gets a kick out of it. And it's like I'm pretty sure if Joffrey didn't live in a medieval fantasy world and he acted the exact same way he does, that he would totally be a serial killer. He'd be like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, and he'd be just doing creepy shit. And it's he just enjoys it so much, for just the most awful sadistic reasons. And I really have to commend Marjorie for just not freaking out about that. I mean, she puts on such a straight face, and I mean, and she definitely knows how to manipulate him and to pretend like she's not off put by that. So while that's happening, Cersei is talking to Marjorie's grandmother, the Queen of Thorns, and in there talking about making wedding arrangements and about I guess just having a mom talk and the Queen of Thorns mentions that her son did wasn't really that competent, and she mentions about how mothers always seem to spend a bunch of time making sure that their sons don't die, and because it just seems like they're so interested in doing it. And she mentions that I think somewhere along the line, something along the line of that, common sense you know just pours off their backs, it just doesn't stick. And that was a particularly interesting conversation. I think it was kind of a weird conversation considering that it happened with Cersei, because I know it seems like the show tries to make her a fairly sympathetic mother person. Like I don't read the books, but I know a little bit about the fact, like not real specific details, but I know at least from a little bit of what I've heard about what she's like in the books, that apparently like she's kind of just like a big huge bitch in the story, and like in that she's not necessarily the best mom in a traditional sense. So I think that this conversation with the Queen of Thorns seems kind of like a weird conversation for Cersei to have, because like I don't think Cersei would necessarily give a shit. Um, and so that happened. Although it was really interesting to see Cersei have a conversation with the Queen of Thorns, because it's like it's obvious that is it's obvious that the Queen of Thorns is so much more intelligent than Cersei, and is obviously a lot more autonomous than Cersei. I think it's kind of interesting because I think the Queen of Thorns is obviously everything that Cersei wants to be. And I guess it's kind of interesting to see Cersei paired up right next to what her fantasy would be in reality. And I think just how short she measures up to that in real life. So that was interesting. After that happens, we cut away to Theon, and he's being assisted by that guy who saved him from the people who were torturing him, and like he takes him to this castle thingy. And so Theon talks about a lot of the shit he does, and he talks about feeling jealous of Robb, and about how he wanted to really impress his dad, and pretty much like he mentioned that he just really fucked up, because the guy who captures him mentions that at least originally the guys who were torturing him mentioned that that his father knew, and so that it was kind of implied that Balin Greyjoy's men captured Theon because and that the mysterious guy was taking Theon to Yara, who is Theon's sister. And so he talks to this guy who he believes is sympathetic to him about all the shit he did, and he mentions how he really regrets betraying everybody, for like really stupid reasons, and that he really regrets, killing the little kids in the farm, or at least having the guy under him kill the little kids. And so I believe that Theon and the guy go into this room, and the guy lights a torch, and it turns out that they're back in a torture chamber, and it turns out that the guy just took Theon, I guess, to another area where these guys still were. Although it kind of, to me, it seemed like it was almost implied that the guy like doubled back somehow, and that they were right back where they were, because like Theon was like freaking out. Um, so, like, yeah, obviously, that guy fucked Theon over. And I'm really wondering why. Like, why did they go through that unless it involved getting information from Theon? Because, like, the guy did get a lot of information from Theon in terms of his motives and what he was supposed to do. So, that was certainly interesting. Yeah, but I guess I'm just wondering what this guy's up to. Is like, because, like, he totally faked Theon out, but then when he got caught, like he just had this really crazed look in his eyes, which was really weird, because like when he's faking Theon out, he looked really calm and really level-headed. So it was kind of weird for that guy to, at least from what we've seen of his character, to make that type of like really crazy transition really quickly. Um, yeah, so definitely, I guess, kind of wondering what that was about. So then after that happens, we cut again back to Jaime and Brienne, and this time they're setting around this campfire, and Brienne's telling Jaime to eat, and Jaime just wallowing. And so it's not Jaime, but Brienne points out the fact, it's like, you're just experiencing the real world. It's like everybody else has important shit taken from it, because Jaime mentions to Brienne that he wants to die because his hand was cut off, and the hand he uses is a sword hand, which reminds me, and I didn't mention it, earlier is that in the earlier scene with Jamie and Brienne that Jamie actually gets into a fight with his captors, but they recapture him, and he actually uses his other hand. So we find out that Jamie's ambidextrous. So that was pretty cool. He wasn't too bad with his hands, with his non-sword hand. So it was kind of cool to see that he was ambidextrous. Like I don't know if he can write with the other hand or anything, but I don't really think Jamie gives a shit about writing. So, but he's at least ambidextrous when it comes to sword fighting. So, uh, getting back to the current scene, Jamie's kind of wallowing about losing his hand and he's like, that hand was who I was, and Brienne's giving him shit, but like she's kind of trying to give him a pep talk because she was like, it's like you're just wallowing. It's like, you experience, one bad stuff in like the real world, and she's like everybody in the real world, has important shit taken from them. And it's like, you should live so you can get revenge. And it's like, and losing your hand, isn't quite the end of the world. It's like you're just experiencing the real world where, you're not in, the Lannister world where your dad can be there, to fucking help you with stuff. So, and she mentions to Jamie, it's like you're whining and crying. It's like you're like a woman. And I find it interesting that like Brienne would say that because I don't know if she necessarily would say that because like I think I'm pretty certain that Brienne is really proud to be a woman, and I don't really think she thinks that being a woman's an insult. But I guess, like, I imagine that they had Brienne say that because, like, you don't really hear a lot of people in the Game of Thrones worlds calling people pussies, which is, like, I think that's probably why she called Jamie a lady because, like, she couldn't have called him a pussy because I don't think that's an insult that exists in this fictional universe. So, like, they went with the lady. Um, and that kind of ribbing, and after that happens, she asks him, like, why did you save me? And, he doesn't answer because she mentions, like, she says, like, I know you told them that Tarth was filled with diamonds, and she mentions that Tarth isn't filled with diamonds. The reason why it's called the Land of Sapphires, not diamonds, like, sorry, is because of it's sapphire blue water. So she's like, why did you do that? And he doesn't answer. And like, I was like, I don't know if he entirely knows why or if he's entirely okay with admitting why. Which that could be like various reasons, like maybe he's into her or something, which is, she's definitely not his type. I mean, obviously she's not related to him, so I think there's some conflicting stuff going on. Um, so I think so he eats and we cut away from them, and we cut to Cersei and Tywin, and Cersei's watching Tywin work, and and she's kind of annoying him. And he asks like, "What do you want?" And Cersei's just like, "I want to know how things are going with your search with the Jaime." And it's like, "Are you using all your resources?" And Tywin's like, "Well, what did I do when Tyrion was kidnapped?" And she said, "You started a war." And she's like, and she's figured, and he says, "If I was willing to start a war to save Tyrion when I think Tyrion's a big piece of shit, like, what do you think that I'm going to do to get back my son and to get Jaime back, who's my first son and my heir?" And she's like, "Everything in your power." And he's like, "Exactly." And then she kind of sticks around, and he's like, "Well, why are you still here?" And "Why, did you ever think about confiding in me and making me a confidant and teaching me the tricks of the trade instead of ignoring me because I was a lady?" And Tywin pretty much answers is like, "The reason why I don't trust you and the reason why I don't make you a confidant isn't because I don't trust you because you're a lady. It's like I don't trust you because you're not as smart as you think you are. And at least currently, like you let Joffrey do whatever the hell he wanted to, and it's like I'm not gonna let that happen." And it's like, and she's like, "Well, are you going to, get in the way of doing, in the way what he likes?" Which I think, I think both both Cersei and Tywin kind of know that Joffrey's kind of a sadistic weirdo. So, like, and he's like, yeah, I will stop him if I have to. And so that's pretty much their scene. Um, and that was certainly interesting. Although, to be honest, I always got the impression that Tywin's kind of supposed to be like a misogynist. And I'm pretty sure, I don't think under normal circumstances, at least from what I understand of his character and what's been shown of his character to me, that I don't know if he necessarily would have had a conversation with Cersei the way he was. So I think this might kind of be like a movie thing. Not a movie, but the TV show thing. Um, so then after that, we cut to Varys talking to the Queen of Thrones about Sansa and about helping Sansa out. And Varys mentions his concerns to the Queen of Thorns about Sansa and Littlefinger. And he mentions that, if Robb were to fall, that Sansa would be the next in line. And that if Sansa were to marry Littlefinger, that Littlefinger could be the king of the North. And that Varys mentions that this really concerns him because he mentions to the Queen of Thorns is that he's certain that that it's and she assumes that Varys like kind of hates Littlefinger, and I think he's annoyed by him. But he mentions that the rally is like he's like no, it's like I think he's an okay guy. It's just he's really dangerous, and I know that he would be willing to destroy the whole country and to rule over his ashes if he could be the king of Westeros. And I think the thing about Varys is that I think Varys has always shown that his interest is in maintaining the stability of Westeros. Like, he doesn't really care who's in power, and he doesn't really care what house they're from as long as they're not fuck ups and as long as they keep shit stable. And that's what he's in for. And I think he's concerned about, Littlefinger making very slow, gradual power plays. And so he wants to enlist the Queen of Thorns so that they can remove Sansa from Littlefinger and hopefully do something with her because, he knows that the Queen of Thorns is interested in Sansa. And so with that said, we cut away to Sansa and Marjorie getting some girl on girl time where they're talking to each other, and Marjorie mentions to Sansa that she'd like to take Sansa with her to Highgarden where the Tyrells are from, and that if she became queen, she could have Sansa marry Loras, and then they could be sisters, because she mentions to Sansa that, I really want to be good friends with you, and Sansa's like, I agree, and it's we could be sisters, and, and Sansa's kind of very excited about that. It's certainly interesting because, especially since that scene happened right after the one with Varys and the Queen of Thorns. So I have a feeling that, I know that Marjorie probably does a lot of talking with her grandmother and with her various family members. So I think, I imagine that it's not a coincidence that those two scenes happened back to back. And honestly, I don't know if Marjorie really gives a shit about Sansa as a person or if she really wants to be friends with Sansa, but I think she definitely does want to do what is in the best interest of the nation, and I imagine that maybe protecting Sansa and keeping Littlefinger from being super powerful would probably be helpful. So then after that, we cut again to the Night Watch, and we're back at them, and we're back at Craster's place. And I think what happens in that episode is they're kind of, they're burying one of their guys who has starved to death. And then, so they're burying him and doing the funeral stuff, and they have a funeral pyre. And then after that happens, they cut right back to Craster's, and there's just two guys who are kind of the fatter brown haired guy, and then this thinner brunette guy, and they're kind of getting really testy about Craster because like they think Craster's a jerk, and so they're starting to be really angry and starting to kind of voice opinions of dissent about Craster not, using their, not feeding them and not treating them right. And so then like some shit starts happening with Craster between the Night's Watch guys. And so one of them calls him a bastard, and like and shit starts getting really tense. And so the Lord Commander guy takes the fat brunette guy outside to punish him after shit kind of calms down at first, but then like when the Lord Commander guy steps out, that the brunette guy calls Craster a bastard, who fucks the daughter, and and he pulls a sword out on him, and he kills Craster, and that just causes all hell to break loose. So, and then like the Lord Commander's trying to stop that guy, and then it turns out that just a all-out mutiny occurs with the Night Watchman, and the Lord Commander ends up getting killed, and then this one guy with white hair ends up getting killed, which I know he's supposed to be important, but I kind of forget who he is, or like I don't really recognize him right off the bat. So pretty much just like all hell breaks loose, and like and a bunch of people are just like so like the Night's Watchmen are kind of just out for themselves, and they've just completely imploded. Which honestly, I have to say, I don't think Mance Rayder could ask for anything more beneficial. Like they just like so like just a complete mutiny happened. I don't know what is gonna happen with those guys. Like I don't know what role they're gonna play. Like I don't know if they're just gonna be a bunch of assholes up north doing whatever, or if they're gonna be like a thorn in the side of like Mance Rayder and Jon. Are they gonna be a thorn in the side of like Westeros? Like are they gonna go try and get back into Westeros? So it'll definitely be interesting to see what that happens with that. But obviously, when that happens, Sam manages to escape, and the one black-haired fat guy who was like a little less fat than Sam mentions, "It's like I'm gonna kill you, piggy." So he mentions that after Sam ends up getting loose, and he ends up taking Gilly with him and Gilly's baby, and he's like, "We need to get the fuck out of here like right now." And he goes and grabs Gilly because like full on mutiny is happening. So, and I have to say, like, I did not think that was going to be a thing that happened. Like, I did not think that the Night's Watch would implode like that. Like, and they're just like, and it's like, so, honestly, I don't know what's going to happen to the rest of the Night's Watch. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's not all of the Night's Watch, but I know that's a lot of them. So like the Night's Watch, I think for all intents and purposes, I think are kind of like really, really low numbers, and I think there's just no way that they could defend against the wildlings in Mance Rayder's army, like let alone like the White Walkers. And it's like these guys have just picked a really bad time to mutiny, because it's like, dude, you guys could have just like fucked over all of Westeros with that stuff, like because like the White Walkers are coming, and it's like they're gonna fuck you over, and they're gonna fuck everybody over because like you guys are doing stuff. So yeah, that was really unexpected. So then after that happens, we cut to a scene with Arya with the band of brothers, and so they go into their cave hideout, and so and we get Sanzor, and we find out that the band, the Brothers Without Banners, is made up a bunch of a bunch of different people from a bunch of different areas, and mostly they're peasants, and like defectors from the various armies. And I guess the guy in charge is this guy with an eye patch, and I believe that they said he was a Targaryen, if I didn't mention, if I heard correctly. Like, I'm not super sure on that, but he has an eye patch. And, he's talking to Sanzor, and he's mentioning about how, like, the Cleganes killed a bunch of children, especially with the thing with the Targaryens, and Sansor's like, I didn't kill any of the Targaryen kids, like, I didn't do any of that shit, like, my brother did that. And he's like, is it a crime to be a Targaryen? And, and he mentions, like, and they're kind of fucking with him, and he's, like, telling them, was like, if you guys are gonna kill me, like, fucking kill me, like, but don't waste my goddamn time doing fluffy shit. And so, while that's happening, like, Sansa mentioned, like, not Sansa, Arya mentions that, Sansa did kill a child after he mentions that he didn't kill the Targaryen children, and that he killed her friend. And so, but the guy with the eye patch mentioned that there's like not like it's kind of like a he said she said thing, and there's not like enough solid evidence to do that. But like they kind of know Sansa, the Hound's an asshole. So he's like, you're going to be charged in a trial of combat. And Sansa's like, well, which one of you motherfuckers are gonna fight me? It's like, because like I'm pretty sure I'm the best fighter here. Like I don't think you guys thought that out. And so the eye patch guy says he'll fight him. And while that's happened, like the eye patch guy mentions, along with the other guys, that they also believe in the flame god that Melisandre and I guess technically Stannis, like I think Stannis uses it for benefits. I don't really think he gives a shit. But yeah, this flame guy, the flame god's coming up a lot, which I mean I think before in the series like it was kind of just like Melisandre doing that, so it's really interesting to see how far this is going, and it's kind of interesting to see that there's people who believe in this, I guess, who are kind of more credible. But honestly, I think because of like the way that they show Melisandre, like and her being really fanatical, like I have to question like the competence of most people who believe in the flame god, because it just seems like so far my experiences with the practitioners of this religion on the show just seem like they seem to be really fanatical. So I'm kind of wondering what the Brothers Without Borders are doing, and like and how well they should be trusted. So so that after, and like right after that happens, we cut to Dany, and she's still in Astapor, and she's about to pick up, and she's picking up her slave army, and she's got her dragon, and so she goes and she releases the dragon to the slave guy, and she's like, "Do I have the slave?" And she uses her interpreter lady, who's also her slave, to ask if the deal's done, and he hands her the whip for the Unsullied, and she trades like the biggest dragon. And so like the dragon's like giving him a lot of shit, like the slave guy, and he mentions like to the slave shit, like that Daenerys like asked that the arm, but he called Daenerys a bitch, and he's just talking shit to Daenerys again. But it turns out, and this is the other super unexpected thing that happened, just in general, is that it turns out that Daenerys can understand everything that this guy says, and so that she can fluently speak the language this guy speaks. So she, like, the whole time, the whole last couple of episodes that he's been talking shit and calling her a whore and a bitch and stuff like that, she could understand every fucking thing he was saying, because he's speaking of Valyrian. And then that it turns out that Daenerys mentioned that she is the blood of old, that she is of old Valyria, and that Valyrian, which is the language he is speaking, is her native tongue. And so she knows what she does, and so she ends up sicking the Unsullied on the people of Astapor, and she ends up sicking the dragon on the guy, because like the guy can't control him. So she uses the dragon to burn the guy, and she tells the Unsullied that you're free and that you can kill every one of the people who were your masters in this area, and that you can free all the slaves, and that you can go and kill the masters, but don't kill the children. And so in this, like at the end of, in this ends the episode, and Daenerys sacks Astapor, like she just fucks it up, and that was really surprising. And Daenerys was really badass, and like that was a super duper badass scene, and like in like I knew that eventually like Daenerys was gonna do stuff that involved sacking cities, but it's like I didn't think it was gonna happen this quickly. And this makes me wonder, it's like why does Daenerys give a shit about the Iron Throne? Because like if she sacked enough shit, like she could just like make her own fucking country and she could just like fuck Westeros. It's like I'm gonna ruin my own shit. I mean, because like that's kind of how people become leaders of countries. It's like they just take over enough shit and it's like I'm in charge. Like so, fuck you guys. And which kind of makes me wonder why she just doesn't go that route because that seems like a fairly viable one. Um, yeah, so she ends up sacking Astapor, and at the end of it, she allows the Unsullied to go free, and she's like, I want you guys to be free, and I want you to serve me as free men, and it's like, and she tells them, like, if you guys want to leave, like, you're free to go, and you won't be punished for it. And it turns out that all the Unsullied end up deciding, despite being free, to be with Daenerys. And I think obviously having them take over like a city, sack Astapor, where people did a bunch of shit to them, um, was probably really helpful. So not only does she have a badass slave army of super badass warriors, but like these warriors are actually loyal to her. So it's like she got the best of both what Jorah wanted and what the other guy wanted, who I don't remember his name because like they hardly say, like they said his name like one time. So it's like you gotta say his name more than once for me to know what it is. So like she got the best of everything and she got to be super duper badass. So that was super duper awesome. And like a lot of stuff, I have to say, like if this is the kind of stuff that's happening like not even midway through the season, like I can't wait to see how the season finale would go and like what other stuff's gonna happen. Like I'm like definitely really really excited and like I can't wait to see what happens. Like there's I can tell that there's just going to be so much cool shit happening. Especially with the thing that happened. Like honestly, I have to say the thing that happened with the Night Watch, like that would have been badass enough to end the episode on. Like they could have ended it on that, but like to follow that up with like the thing with Danny being like super badass, like that was awesome. So definitely looking forward to next week's episode and to seeing like what other super awesome shit happens. Um, so definitely excited for next week's episode. So with that said, this has been a review of Game of Thrones season 3, episode 4, and I really want to hear what your guys' opinion on the episodes were. Remember, no book spoilers because I just watched the TV show, and like not everybody who watches this reads the book, so no spoilers. But make sure to comment on your thoughts on this week's episode. Rate the video if you like it and subscribe to my channel if you like my stuff. And so I'll see you guys again next time.